still pretty cool. Ooh, what the hell was that?
Talk to me, goose.
Welcome back to the channel, guys. Hope everyone's doing well. Today, pretty excited because this little bad boy's turned up. The DJI FPV combo. So if you're not really into drones or you've kind of been living under a rock lately, you won't know what this is. But basically, this is DJI's attempt at making a kind of FPV drone. So this is your typical kind of FPV setup. You've got a lightweight racing drone. This is under 250 grams. You've got battery obviously for the drone, got a set of goggles which are DJI goggles, so you're effectively seeing what the drone sees, so you can fly as if you're inside the drone. And then here I've got a TBS Tango 2, basically the controller. So that is your setup. That's what you need for FPV these days. Nice simple setup. So what DJI have gone and done really is just try to make a simple setup like that, which will get people into FPV without having to build anything. So although you can buy this drone off the shelf, you've still got to put a receiver in it, which involves soldering. You've got to set up your transmitter, you've got to bind everything together, and yeah, you've got to do lots of kind of configuration and fiddling about. The advantage of this, of course, is if it breaks, you can fix it, because it's easy to get these propellers, like the frame, you can get bits and pieces for. It's pretty cheap. This drone's about 300 quid. So it's not really the end of the world if you prang it, which you will do if you're flying FPV. Trust me, you will. Right, so here's the DJI FPV combo unboxed. There's other stuff like batteries and other bits and pieces, so I've kind of just left them out for the purposes of this. So you got your goggles. These are V2 goggles, different from the original V1 goggles. Aren't intercompatible or anything. Can't use those goggles with that drone. Yeah, so it's not going to work. But basically, yeah, you've got your goggles, you've got your drone, which is a different class of drone to that one, a lot bigger, and you've got the controller, which looks very similar to the TBS Tango one, actually. So yeah, two systems side by side. You can see what they've gone and done. It's taken me a little while to kind of put this together. I needed help from a friend to actually get this FPV setup up and running. I probably could have done it myself and researched it, but it was a lot quicker with someone that knew what they were doing. Shout out to Neil from NJ Tech channel. Go and check out his brilliant drone videos as well. So you can see what they've gone and done here. They've tried to, you know, make a off-the-shelf kind of FPV solution, similar to, you know, what I've made, but obviously different class of drones here. It's you know, this is a lot bigger. The main difference between these two setups really is that obviously this has only got an FPV camera and it hasn't got high quality 4K recording, whereas this does, and this has a gimbal as well. So extra bits that are needed. Need a charger if you're using that system. Obviously the charger comes with the FPV combo. You're going to need a battery, at least one, probably more like 10 or something like that. Obviously you get a battery with the FPV combo. This is a bigger battery obviously because it's a lot bigger class of drone. And you also get another battery for the goggles. Now the V2 goggles come with this battery, I think, in this combo pack they do. But the original goggles didn't, and I thought that was quite annoying because they're quite expensive. So I kind of ended up with this kind of little aftermarket battery on the back. So I've been flying DJI drones for probably about 5 years now, something like that. Like most people, after a while it gets a bit boring, same old footage, putting in your videos, and yeah, I mean we do use it for the bike stuff, so it's pretty cool for that. But yeah, it's just a little bit kind of same old, same old. So once I got started with FPV, absolutely loved it, thought it was brilliant. But what I was kind of longing for was some of those safety features or some of those kind of nice advanced features that you get with the DJI drones, like GPS. You can see how fast you're going, you know, get some of that information back into the goggles, and also things like, you know, return to home. Not particularly, you know, once you get to grips with FPV, it's easy to, you know, get your orientation and find out where you are. But some of these little features I really missed. It was kind of like, you know, not knowing if the drone was going to come back if you went out for a mission. Maybe that's part of the excitement. I crashed it loads, found myself walking around fields trying to find drones and stuff like that. So what I started to do was start to try and replicate some of the stuff that DJI had actually already put in their other drones, like the Mavic Mini and the Mavics. So things like GPS. Now, because FPV is such an advanced hobby, you can do all of this. You can add a GPS receiver. You can add lost model alarms, so the drone just makes a massive bleeping sound so you can find it if you lose it in a field. Just really cool stuff like that. But it's still not quite as advanced as the stuff that DJI makes. Another thing I experimented with, if you look at some of my earlier videos, is kind of trying to increase the range on these little FPV drones as well. to sort of do more long range FPV stuff. So if you look at this little thing, it's been modded out to the max. It's got a GPS receiver on there, it's got a lost model alarm, super loud. Even if the battery flies off the bottom, the alarm will carry on going off because it's got its own independent power supply. You know, it sends telemetry into the goggles and also onto the screen of that controller. You know, packed with technology, which you have to actually set up yourself. And that's not easy. Whereas this thing, with no propellers on it, actually has all the technology under the sun and probably more. This will even alert you to aircrafts in the area, so you don't unintentionally go near a passing helicopter or something like that. Battery's massive as well. They reckon about 20 minutes flight time. You've got collision avoidance as well, which won't work obviously in the fast modes, but it's there. But there is a problem. You crash it and you're stuffed. Or are you? Because I've seen videos of a teardown of this thing and it actually looks not too bad to actually repair. I mean, that's if you can get the parts. Apparently the motor and the arm comes as one separate unit, so you can't just replace a motor if a motor fries, which has happened a number of times on that. And this weighs nearly 900 grams or something like that. So, you know, no plastic's gonna hold up if you smack that into a goalpost. Be interesting to see what happens going forward on the aftermarket side of things, if someone could actually build a carbon frame to actually put all of that electronics in, because most of it is separate and can be pulled out. So that'd be quite interesting. But why would you do that rather than building some sort of, you know, drone of a similar size, or even that, because it's lighter and, you know, does basically the same thing with a lot less intimidation because it's under 250 grams. But the fact of the matter is DJI is actually creeping into even the DIY side of things, because, you know, that's got a Caddx Vista unit in, which allows it to transmit video to the DJI digital goggles. Anyway, enough of the waffling. Let's sort of try and figure out what this thing's all about and what it flies like. So the first thing you've got to do is turn everything on and activate it in typical DJI fashion. So you insert the battery, clicks in, and you've got this sort of like XT sort of connector, which is pretty neat. And that just kind of, you just connect that in, difficult to do with one hand. Got this little battery for the goggles. This has got a USB-C on it. It won't work with anything else. Don't try and charge your phone with it because it outputs about 9 volts, but there is a safety circuit in, so it won't actually charge. It won't actually output anything unless you use the DJI lead, which is, this is the one for the goggles. So it's got that on that end, plugs into the goggles, and then that goes into that battery. You just turn that on, 2 clicks. Here the goggles start up. Getting a nice breeze from that fan coming off there. And then turn the controller on, and then also turn the drone on. Listen to this, look. Pretty scary. I wonder if you could make it do that in the air. That'd be pretty cool. So everything's on. The first problem I had was basically you've got to activate the system. If you look into the goggles when you first get it, it will say it's not activated. My system was all bound up when I got it, so basically, you know, everything was linked together. But in the goggles, it actually said you need to activate everything and update all the firmware. So what you've got to do is you've got to use like this OTG connector here, little adapter. You've got to plug that little adapter into the goggles by its USB-C thing, and then connect that to your smartphone. Problem I had, when I first connected it to the smartphone, it didn't actually do anything. It didn't register that there was a drone or anything connected to it at all. And if you sort of go to connect aircraft, it would just say Mavic Mini 2, Mavic, or, you know, a bunch of other drones, which not this one basically. So on Android at least, I had to go to DJI's website and basically find the DJI Fly app on their website. I think it might be a later version or something that maybe isn't on Play Store yet. So you can see now it's working. It even charges the phone as well now. So you can have this connected and it basically just gives you the same sort of type head-up display as you would on a normal drone, I think. Can't see anything else here, but the camera's working at least anyway. Make sure all your batteries are charged up, because the update process, like for updating the firmware, which happens after you've connected it for the first time, takes quite a while. So yeah, make sure all your batteries are fully charged before you do that, and then you're gonna have to charge them again if you've only got one for flying. In true DJI spirit, all the drones are the same, just take ages to update. So just doing some pre-flight setup. I'd read somewhere that it doesn't allow manual mode out of the box, and of course we want to test the manual mode. I'm not going to remove the attitude limit, which would allow it to basically just flip upside down. I want to kind of have a bit of safety on there first of all, just whilst testing. So yeah, you have to go into the goggles and basically enable that manual mode. Otherwise, on the 3-position switch here, that last one will just default to the sport mode, so you won't get that full manual mode, and we want that. So you basically got to go into the remote control menu, button customization, and then down the bottom sport mode you can change that to manual. It does warn you about kind of having a sprung throttle, which you can adjust if you sort of take the back of the remote control off there, just under the rubber cover. But I'm going to leave it like this and see how it goes, because otherwise you just want to be, when you flip between modes, the other modes aren't going to work well if they're not in centered stick mode. See, now it's actually going into manual mode. Look at that, it actually fits in the backpack as well. Just used the foam packing that it came with, and that should just hold it in there nicely. I've obviously had to take the props off because obviously they don't fit on there, might get broken, but there you go. Controller will fit in there as well, just at the top somewhere. Just out somewhere quiet to try and find somewhere to do the first test flight of the drone. This looks like a good place. There's no one about anywhere. Right, let's get this thing sorted out.
So how do they not fly?
They're sort of like genius locking mechanism. Oh, that's a spring actually. It's a spring and then they sort of lock, so once they're actually on they won't come off. That's that. Controller.
Wipe a bit of snot.
At least you get the battery with this one, as I was saying, but you still, I'd like to see it on a little bracket on there or something, because it's a bit of a pain having this like in your pocket and this wire dangling down. Anyway, here we go. I'll fly.
And the curve is Flyman.
What man?
Flyman.
Flyman? Flymo?
Flyman.
Right, I'm going to put it over here somewhere. Somewhere flat. Turn the drone on.
Blimey.
Sounds cool, doesn't it? I've got it on recording, so I'm going to start the recording on here.
We don't really need to keep seeing you looking like that.
Not really. Everything's looking pretty good. I'm recording on the camera, normal mode, 99% battery, hands flipping freezing.
Wind chill.
Wind chill. Start the motors. Just sort of clipping the undergrowth.
Ooh.
Alright, I'm going to take off. Hovering. Right, let's go for a little cruise. What's really cool is you can see like a little home point on the screen. Oh, that's weird. It's like it kind of banks as you do rudder. That is really weird. Because it kind of banks. It's got a programmed in bank. So when you turn on the rudder, the whole thing just kind of flips around. Alright, so I'm going to have another little cruise around. It's kind of strange. It doesn't feel like you're flying an FPV drone really, because you've got that sort of like fake sort of rudder, which is kind of weird, but it's kind of cool. You can see the propellers in the display, in the screen. Right, so I've got this like home position directly above me, which is really cool. It kind of hangs over the top of where we are, so I can see exactly where we've taken off from. It's pretty neat. Right, okay, so I'm going to go and turn around and just flick it into sport mode and see what this thing will do. It's nice that you can just hover, like, you know, kind of, it's just like any other DJI drone really. You just sort of basically hovering, you know, without having to worry about it too much. So I'm going to flick it into sport mode, sport mode, obstacle avoidance unavailable. Give it some beans. Yeah, it's quick. So I've got this bleeping sound showing that I'm quite low to the ground, even though I'm not really. That's so weird. That banking thing is so strange. I mean, it's going to be really good for kind of getting sort of shots. You know, if you want to do, you can basically easily do like really cool FPV stuff with this without actually having any experience at all. It's going to catch a few people out, I think. You can hear it fighting the wind a little bit, which is sort of like banking round. Oh, let's get level. So all you do is you just take your fingers off the sticks and it will just level out. Image quality is really clear. There you go, and it just basically hovers. Right, so now a bit of manual mode. Let's try a bit of manual mode, see what's going to happen. So this has got limited amount of attitude. Right, so we're in manual mode now. So the bank angle is actually restricted now because I'm full stick forward. Tighten full stick F2. Still pretty cool. Ooh, what the hell was that?
Talk to me, goose.
Right, so I've sort of got this thing up on the screen which says switch to manual mode. Use the control stick to move the cursor to the green line. So do we actually have to take off? No, we're in manual mode, but it's weird because it doesn't really kind of behave like a normal like FPV drone. It's a bit strange. So I need to probably just come back and see what this is all about. It's nice sort of just having like bags and bags of like run time on this, because I mean I'm not having to worry about, you know, batteries or anything like that. I'm going to flip to like line of sight mode now so I can actually get this landed.
Yeah.
DJI landings, they're just so like faultless. Like if you've got an proper real FPV drone, you're sort of like scooting it about the floor trying to get it out of ground effect and stuff. But yeah, first impression's good. I need to figure out this manual mode, kind of weird. So yeah, we figured out the I figured out the sport mode, normal mode, the normal mode. Sorry, completely manual mode. You have to basically move the sticks to where it says green on the display, and I think that's to basically compensate for where the drone is flying at the moment. So that's pretty clever. So yeah, sussed out the full manual mode, and it's awesome. It's really good. It's a bit weird getting used to it because it's slightly different to like true FPV, but yeah, it's actually really good. And if you do get stuck, you can just basically just hit the pause button on there, and it will just come to a complete like dead stop. It kind of makes a load of noise and going, and then it just literally just stops. We heard it echo across the whole flipping lot of the hills over there, didn't we? It's like crazy sound. But yeah, so all in all, I'm thinking this is pretty interesting. I'm gonna have a lot more playing around with it and see what it's like.